to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May I have a roll call of the governing board?
Good morning, everyone. Please be patient with me. I'm going to do my best with everybody's last name. It's my first time through. Thank you.
Need to speak into the mic, and I will remind everyone, please, when you're speaking, eat the mic, speak right into it.
You got
Thank
it.
you.
Okay. Member Glassman. Member Shuham.
Here.
Member Davis.
Here.
Member Mateo Bowen.
Here.
It went off. Thank you. Member Mike Ryan. Member Horland.
Here.
Member Drosky. Member Dunn. Member Villalobos. Member Mead. Here. Member Pagano. Member Walsh. Member Borgelin. Member Ernst. Member Thomas. Member Mayerson.
I'm here.
Member Ross.
Here.
Member AJ Ryan.
Here.
Member Price. Member Newton.
Here.
Member Marshall. Member Bright Cruz.
Here.
Member Morissette. Member Strauss. Member Ravenzi. Member Fulmar. Member Furr.
Here.
Do we have alternates that are here for any of the cities whose names were not called? No alternates? Thank you
Sorry.
very
Okay,
much.
yes.
Any other corrections, additions, deletions? Thank you very much. Do we have a quorum?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Public comment. We have a few people. Again, 2 minutes per person, one time only, and the time cannot be allotted to any other person. John Stephen Garati.
Is everybody hearing a little bit better out there now? Better? Okay. Good.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. John Garati from the proud little town of Southwest Ranches. Oh, this is interesting acoustics. I attended along with our mayor and a few other residents to the public workshop in Lauderhill. Acoustics were our biggest problem. Couldn't really hear anything, but it is the first of many, I hope. But what shocked me, and I'm not going to take any thunder away from Debbie because she was here before all of us. We didn't see many Lauderhill residents. If we don't penetrate that community we're in, and let's not talk about social classes, it's just about that community we're in needs to know our message. So what you guys were discussing earlier about integrating platforms and integrating websites with all your communities, it's the only way to get so let's say we're in Pinecrest, not Pinecrest, say we're in Parkland, say we're in Dania Beach. Those folks that live there, no matter the social class, should know what this is about. A lot of the lower social classes, depending on their economics, their last thing on their minds is what you're going to do with your trash. They have to pay their bills. They have to pay the rent. They have to pay their credit card bills. So how do we get to them? Because they produce trash like I do, like everybody else does. So that's super important. I really would like an extra minute, not today, but there's a lot of folks that have a lot of important topics that do a lot of research, and I don't think in 2 minutes it's enough time to talk about. I speak from the cuff. I don't plan things out, but I speak what I observe. But just the fact that we have to get to every economic class is my topic of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Ramcheritar. Getting there. I first have to come up with Shuham first, and then. Exactly.
Good morning. The real problem with developing new incinerators is that you have to feed the beast. This has happened in Honolulu. They can't fully pursue zero waste because they have a long-term put or pay contract with the incinerator. So we have to encourage Broward County to invest in zero waste transfer stations. This is what Washington, D.C. is doing. Incinerators do not get rid of trash. They just burn and create ash. The ash, 10 to 25% of the incoming weight of the trash, must be landfilled at a landfill that is permitted to accept it. The ash is sometimes toxic. Plus, incineration cannot handle non-processable waste. This is typically construction debris, most of what we might have in the residuals, painted or treated wood, for example. Certified zero waste consultants, such as Ruth Abbey and Associates, Zero Waste Associates, have done incinerator transition plans for some zero waste communities. These plans involve maximizing diversion from destructive disposal through policies, programs, and infrastructure, then conducting a landfill study to identify landfills to transfer the legacy materials, things that can't be eliminated, reused, recycled, or composted. The ideal landfills are sited in areas that do not impact residents, particularly in environmental justice communities. And West Broward will become an environmental justice community if we decide to build an incinerator out there. Thank you.
James Lasky, I have you signed up twice. You can only speak once.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You guys did such a good job. I was really enthused at the way you handled every issue that came before you until North Fort Lauderdale. I didn't get a chance to bitch about this sooner, but that was really, really not reflective of what I feel you still think is the right way to approach that. If those people in that neighborhood had shown up, they probably would have raised a lot more hell than I did. All right. They just would have said, you're just fooling us. And there's tens of billions of dollars a year being put into modern day technology, which is artificial intelligence, to sort this waste problem out, beginning with the truck before you actually put it in the truck. Now, this is expected to advance at the rate of 10 times every 6 months. It can see, it can feel, it can touch. All right, what more do you want? You're going to have robots working in landfills, not people anymore. And a robot can build a robot can repair a robot. I mean, you really got to think way ahead. That's my biggest objection with the people you hired for consultants, because that seems to be their biggest shortcoming, is they don't really understand technology like people that do it for a living. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica Elliott.
Thank you. My name is Monica Elliott. I'm representing the League of Women Voters of Broward County. We want to thank Todd Storty and the city and town officials for attending the showing of the documentary film, We Are All Plastic Now, last Saturday at the North Regional Library. We appreciate that they took a Saturday afternoon to attend the event. Mr. Storty graciously stayed behind and spoke with a number of attendees. We urge you all to see the film. It is alarming how much plastic is in our bodies now, even those of infants. Every effort to reduce our use of single-use plastics is critical to preserving the health and well-being of all of us, especially our young people. As we move into the nuts and bolts of drafting a master plan, we hope you all will keep the mission in mind. As stated in the documents, the Broward SWA's mission is to protect the long-term public health, safety, and welfare of Broward residents by implementing a transparent, innovative, and environmentally proactive plan to reduce waste generation, increase the reuse and recycling of discarded resources, and minimize waste disposal. We cannot expect this will happen overnight. or there will not be an upfront cost. We remind you, the ILA was chosen as a form of governance over an independent or dependent taxing district due to concern of state government interference. But it requires that all parties work in a cooperative manner for the good of the entire county. It's a long-term plan. We need to stick with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Debbie Green.
Debbie Green. Good morning, all. We all need to do a better job of advertising the community engagement meetings throughout all our communities. I respectfully request that each of you direct to your city or towns to promote on email blasts and social media. As part of that outreach, please be transparent and also sharing with residents that when the flyer states innovative, environmentally sustainable, and economically efficient regional solid waste master plan, that includes incineration, waste to energy, and burners. At the first meeting, I would say at least 25% of the participants were from Southwest Ranches and another 10% or so from residents from other cities involved with the grassroots effort to fight against any new incineration, waste to energy being included in the 40-year master plan that you all are creating. To be clear, the total participation at that first meeting was 0.01% of the total population of Broward County. And that was a greater people showing up than what anybody expected. At that meeting, there was consensus that most thought the solid waste disposal system should be consistent for all cities, towns, and Broward. The importance of education. Most were good with what they were paying now for current services, but also said they are willing to pay more for composting, recycle, and reuse programs. 100% of residents in my group said yes, that they would be willing to separate food waste from other garbage if organic collection was available. And that sounded to be consistent feeling in the other two groups as they shared their recaps. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak that hasn't signed up as yet? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that out.
Mr. Chair, just
Yeah.
as a question, can we, for the next meeting, make sure that Sully and Mary Lou actually have a table? They're doing a lot of work here, keeping notes, minutes, et cetera, and they're the only ones without. Thank you, sir.
Point well taken. Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 4, do I have an approval of minutes for the 21st of February, 2024 meeting? I have motion by member Mike Ryan, second by member Newton. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. It passes unanimously. Item number 5 is the executive director's report. Todd Storty.
Good morning, everyone. First off is a financial update. We'll have Angela Harms from Coase Rensnick go through a quick update with regards to the year-end financial and where we are. Profit and loss. Getting a microphone.
Good morning, Angela Harms from Coase Rensnick. So to report the statement of financial position at the end of this month, September 30th, the fiscal year, there are net assets of $1,624,411. And I know that we're going to discuss the budget further, but the fiscal year spending and total expense is $761,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Hearing none, move on.
Next item is just introduction of the website in front of you. There's place strategic. I'm sorry, we're back up. Yeah,
Can we get a copy of the financial report?
absolutely. We'll get that out later. Yes. Next item, introduction of the website, BrowardSWA.org. You can see it up on the screen. There's a couple of flyers distributed throughout the line, throughout the room today. It is live. We have the ability to be able to push information out on that site along with a couple of the social media outlets. In addition to that, you mentioned a number of you with regards to comments. There is the ability to go to the site and actually enter your comments that we are reviewing on a weekly basis. So please, if there's comments that aren't able to be brought up here, please use the website provide your comments. We will be looking through those and incorporating those comments into our consideration for the master plan development. That's it with regards to that. Is there any questions on the website? We will get out more information and we'll start pushing the website. It came live last week and we do believe it'll be a great tool. There'll be surveys, some other items that will be distributed through the website to be able to provide your opinion and comments throughout this process. So please refer to that website. We will make sure that it's as current as possible.
Question, Member Davis.
Just a question. I know you have the website. Do you have any social media pages?
I believe that we have the Facebook, Instagram, and there's YouTube.
And what's the handles for those?
I'll have to get those to you. I think it's Broward SWA, I believe, but I want to make sure. Okay. I believe everyone is Broward SWA, but I need to confirm.
You don't have TikTok? You're not doing any dancing or anything?
Member Bowen.
Not yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Executive Director Todd.
Into the mic, please.
Can you
Thank
hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Thank you so much for your newsletter that you sent out. Is it possible that we can get that on a regular basis? I would like to include that in my commission communications when I report out to my community.
There's a membership involved with that. That was actually forwarded to me from Member Beam.
Okay.
Member Fur, I'm sorry, but we can look into getting a membership for that publication and see about distributing that along with a weekly update or some other mechanism that was discussed earlier.
Because individuals in my community really want to know how this committee is moving forward, and they're super excited that this entity exists. So I want to make sure that while we have their attention, we maintain it and continue to keep them engaged.
Understood.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to item number 6, the SWA Governing Board nomination and election of the chair and vice chair. And this is an action item. I will take the privilege, if you will, of going first for the vice chair, and I take great pride in nominating Vice Chair Member Beam Fur. Are there any other nominations? We'll go ahead and close that out. We'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. Congratulations. We'll move on to the governing board nomination for the chair. I will take nominations. Commissioner Fur.
Thank you. Again, I think given what we talked about at the executive committee and the fact that okay, I'll start from the beginning. I would like to nominate Greg Ross for the next month. And I realize Greg's only going to be here another month, but I also realize that elections are taking place in November. There are going to be a turnover here as well as in the executive committee. There are going to be new people to choose from, people that, that could be very, very good people as well. I think we need to have a discussion item that discusses how to make this work better with timing in terms of after elections, making sure you have a full slate. So this is temporary.
Right. After the election.
After the election,
right.
Yeah. I'm not sure why we picked October 1st, but it didn't make sense. So we're going to have to kind of rectify that. In the meantime, I'm glad to nominate Greg. I think you've been doing a great job.
Thanks very much. Do you have a second on that? I have a second further.
Just real quick for the governing board members, perhaps who weren't here for the earlier meeting, just to explain. October 1st was chosen because we were doing the budget. The budget gets approved by the governing board before October 1st. And so it made sense at that time. It was well understood that there was a predicament here, but now we're living it. And so what it will mean going forward is that there'll need to be a reevaluation of the bylaws in this regard, and that there should be another governing board meeting in November, which is healthy as we bring in either new members or new appointees, or commissions decide they want different folks who want to be part of it. So overall, I think it is good, one, to have the budget hearing as it is, keep the budget system the way it is, and second, have the, as is done in many cities, have the selection of the chair in the next November meeting before December. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And I think we still have to figure out if if it should be in the November meeting. Because every city would have to go through the nominating process of who they're going to put on this. It may need to be the December meeting, whenever, something like that, to be worked out though.
Member Bowen, followed by Member Shuham.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So we have on this agenda at item 8, the approval of bylaws. During the break of the meeting, I spoke with our counsel, Mr. Cole, and a suggestion was made that I think will rectify the situation. Currently, under the bylaws, if there's a vacancy, we have to have a meeting to fill that within 60 days. So currently, that would take us November right into January, and it probably wouldn't work for the purpose, for the reason Vice Chair Fur mentioned, and also holidays and things like that. So if we get to, when we get to item 8 on the agenda, I propose, and I will make a motion to approve the bylaws subject to a change where the time to fill a vacancy is increased from 60 days to 90. And I think that will solve the problem. Okay, so for anyone that wasn't in the here in the earlier meeting, there was just a goal of trying to have these positions filled at the same time that we are approving budgets. It's not going to work. And so I think this fix will take care of it.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, with respect to Member Shuham's suggestion, I appreciate the work that was done to try to find a solution. I don't want to treat this as a vacancy. I prefer to treat this as an appointment that is done by the governing board as opposed to a vacancy. And I think the 90 days, we could have a vacancy in March. We could have a vacancy in July for some reason. Someone's out ill. I think being more rapid is still good. The idea of a vacancy was to adjust something that is unusual and unexpected. Instead, I think as being suggested, perhaps the start for the chair will always be in December, whether there's a December meeting or a late November meeting, and they have it certain. This way, we're moving rapidly. We know in the interim, if there is that, and in this situation, a vacancy that occurs between October 1 and November, that we have a vice chair that can take over and seamlessly proceed. That's why we have a vice chair. So I don't have a fear of an empty space. I just fear extending, one. And then two, I think we just need to create a institutional specific plan rather than treating it as a vacancy. I think we'll have to go back and look at the bylaws in a more focused way.
Mr. Cole.
Mayor Ryan, the suggestion by Commissioner Sharon was deal with this issue that we have right now, just in case we can't have a meeting of the governing board in November or December, because the deadline would be January 5th. So this would really just solve it for now. We are planning on revisiting the issue and potentially changing the start date for the terms, which I think will ultimately probably be a better solution. And then we could go back to the 60 days on the vacancy. But for now, I am a little bit concerned that we may not get a quorum in December or late November. So this would give us the flexibility just for this one time for January. We could have the meeting late January and elect the chair.
If the proposal is to just do a one-time change in the bylaw and then go back, I guess we could do that. It's not something I love doing, but I understand your concern. I just don't think we should allow a vacancy to go 90 days in any scenario, and I don't want that to slide through to become institutionalized. If it's the will of the body for this one particular moment that we may have trouble in getting in December, fair enough, but I'm concerned about institutionalizing that.
Member Shuham.
No, I think.
Thank you very much. We will go ahead and take any additional nominations for the chair. Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close that. Call the vote. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, passes unanimously, and thank you. I thank you very much, and I was going to say on behalf of both Vice Mayor Furr and myself, we thank you all. Moving on to item number 7, SWA approval of 2025 budget. Do I have a motion? By Member Ryan, second by Member Newton. Sorry, you're a little late. Further discussion on the budget. Hearing none, call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed, say nay. It passes unanimously. Item number 8, SWA approval of bylaws. Member Shuham.
I would like to make a motion to approve, subject to A, the time to fill a vacancy extended from 60 days to 90 days, and B, that council come back to us at the next opportunity with suggestions to fix the scheduling glitch we've discovered.
Do I have a second for discussion?
Second.
I have a second for discussion. Member Villalobos.
Mr. Coe, would it just be easier to do like an addendum or something rather than changing the bylaws? Like a temporary addendum subject to whatever happens afterwards?
I'm not sure how we do an addendum, but my thought was that we will have a meeting probably in January of the full governing board. You'll elect a chair at that to fill the vacancy. At that same meeting, we would have an amendment to the bylaws to deal with this issue permanently. So this would just, by making it 90 days, it lets us have the meeting in January, and then we will probably change that back to 60 days. But we'll discuss. I don't like to make these long-term decisions on the fly.
Right.
But Commissioner Shuram is the designated member of the executive committee that's deals with bylaws. So I will work with her and Mr. Storti, and we'll come up with what will hopefully be a good solution, and we'll have the amendment to the bylaws at that same meeting. So it will happen right then.
When are the cities being notified that they need to pick someone to be the representative?
No.
Right.
So it's,
They'll have to be notified right shortly before or after the election. I mean, they theoretically, they could do it before the election. It doesn't really make sense because they won't have people yet. So it'll probably be right after the election. We would ask them to do that and advise us by beginning of December of their new people. And we'll move from
yeah,
there.
because for example, in my city, we're planning on canceling a meeting. So we're not going to have one meeting possibly in November and one meeting possibly in December. So I think that information needs to be sent to every city saying that we need it by a certain date after the November 5th election.
Right. At that meeting, the governing board is also going to have to fill any vacancies in the executive committee. For example, Commissioner Vice Mayor Davis is going to be at the county commission. So that large position is going to have to be filled by a vote of the large members, and any other vacancies that we have, Cooper City's vacancy, medium cities would fill that vacancy. So we're going to have to do that at that meeting, and we'll also elect the chair at that meeting.
Member Bright Cruz.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to second that. I think that there's a lot going on November, December. We also just have one meeting in November, one meeting in December. So that communication piece, Todd, I think, I'm not sure who you're going to, I would definitely send it to the town administrators. And it's going to need to get on their radar.
Yes. Member Fur.
Exactly, on the agenda. Perfect.
Yes, to that point, it's only those cities that somebody's not going to be there. Everybody else here is on a 2-year term. I guess you know that. Yeah. Also, I just want to say, Commissioner Shu, great job on the bylaws. Thank goodness it was you and not having to do that. So that's great.
We do appreciate the work of everyone here, honestly. Do I have a motion? I have the motion. I have a second on it. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it unanimously. Moving on to item number 9, county update. Commissioner, or I should say Vice Mayor, Member Beam Fur.
And I'm just going to pass this right over to Kevin Kelleher, Assistant Deputy Administrator.
Kevin Kelleher, Assistant County Administrator. The update from the county is on Monarch Hill. There's 2 items that'll be presented to the County Commission for their consideration in the October-November timeframe. It's anticipated that there'll be a set for a public hearing that'll be on the October 22nd County Commission agenda. And then the public hearing will be set most likely the following meeting or sometime in November. The 2 items are the land use plan amendment. This is a change the land use from electrical generation to industrial designation, and this is for the 24.2 acres where the former North Waste to Energy plant was, and so they can use that as a landfill. The second item is an ordinance change to increase the permitted heights of landfills to 325. And of other county business, the waste characterization generation study, the waste characterization, that's, what the garbage is made of, what the waste is made of, that was presented to the Solid Waste Authority Executive Committee. We provided to them as well as to the municipal administrators back in June. The waste generation study is being finalized by the consultant, and as soon as that's completed, it will be forwarded to the Executive Committee as well as to the municipal administrators. That's it for the county update.
Any questions? Any questions? There you go, Josh. We do. We'll share.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan. My first question is this. I know it was originally, Kevin, if I can inquire on Kevin or Beam or whoever, I know it was originally docketed to go for a motion to transmit on October 8th, and then the subsequent first hearing for both of those county issues were going to be on October 22nd. My understanding, just based on what you just published on your county agenda, is there's no longer the motion to transmit on the 8th, which is that true?
That is correct. It's not a motion to transfer. It's what we call a motion to set for public hearing.
So that the October 22nd is no longer happening. Is that a correct statement?
The October 22nd is the motion to set the public hearing. That's just a scheduling item. It will be at a subsequent meeting. The actual public hearing will be at a subsequent meeting.
But no, I understand that. But for example, Coconut Creek has a vested interest in Monarch Hill. What we had seen a timeline agenda had been first meeting in October, and then the actual hearing was going to be October 22nd.
Generally, that's how it works. It's scheduled on one and then it comes on the following one. So if it's now going to be on the October 22nd,
Understood.
it's likely to be on the November 12th.
Okay, so is that, you firm with that, or you don't know?
Until it hits the agenda, nothing's firm.
Understood. I appreciate
Josh,
that.
that's pretty firm, but it may change if there needs to be more discussions with Waste Management.
Well, listen, candidly, we obviously activate our community on this issue.
Sure.
We've activated them on
And we'll try to make sure you know way ahead.
Understood. So I just want to be clear so I can go back to my staff that October 22nd is no longer happening and we're looking at November 12th.
Yep.
I will also just say this to the board. This is my first time able to address you as a member of the governing committee because I've been to all your executive committees and just have to speak in public comment. I do believe that this board should take a vested interest in what happens at Monarch Hill. I think Beam made a correct statement that there will need to be landfills. I don't think that's a misnomer. I think, for the next 10, 20, 30 years, that's a reality. But the reality also is you can, it's a Davy term. You can horse trade. And I really hope that whatever negotiations are going on are viable and robust. And also, it's not something I support because I think this board, if this board comes through a master plan and says, we're going to look at plastics, we're going to look at all these potential different issues, and I've sat here through the visioning and I've looked at it all, that I firmly do believe that this board should take a hard line position that there should not be county action expanding landfills, both in height and width, before there's a master plan. It doesn't make sense to me. And I've sat through working group meetings on Zoom. I've been an active member of this community. Well, I'm not an actual member because it's a vested interest in Coconut Creek. So I just urge this board to take a position on that November 12th meeting. And I think that's how you can get the whole county commission to at least listen. And I hear a lot from some of my colleagues in the southwest of the county about incinerating. Coconut Creek will be a partner on that issue too, because we're looking to move forward in the right way on this board globally. So I just urge this board and all its members to take more of a position that, hey, county, and I understand people have rights, Waste Management has rights, but we really should wait until there is a master plan before there's any approval of an expansion, especially when the county could make pretty strict conditions on expansion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. I have Commissioner Furr, followed by,
No, I'm done.
oh, okay, then Member Bright Cruz, followed by Member Ryan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of items there. I don't understand, obviously, the county's going to do what the county's going to do, but I don't understand when we have a master plan that I just looked at the Gantt chart is scheduled, it should be there by March. We're not talking about waiting 2 or 3 years for that to happen. We're talking about several months. Why the county would make a decision like this, expanding the landfill, when that's right around the corner. And I think we're all committed to staying on that timeline. So I really feel like, I know we've talked about this in the past, but it's never made sense to me why that was. I understand this is a long-term plan. I understand all that, but we're not talking about an extended period of time. We're talking about a relatively short period of time. And I think it should be delayed until after, I won't go there, but I think it should be delayed. I think it should be delayed. If the county was going to make any sort of a move at this point, I think that what should be on the table is how the landfills themselves are run. There is a ton of debris that's just thrown in there altogether. The green debris is mixed with everything else, There could be an easy change there that would start separating that out into different groups. And we might not even have to increase it. Or if we increase it, we certainly would be pushing it out years, probably decades. So I think that there are other things that the county should be looking at that are more productive, that are more forward thinking than just increasing landfill. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Ryan.
Mr. Chair, to piggyback on my colleague's comments, I would say that to the extent that what we're being told is there is an exigency here and there's a need to move forward at this time, then it is required, in my opinion, that we have a full presentation to this body that is detailed in the issues that have been raised by my colleagues, not only today, but in the past, including how it's utilized, what the calculations are for this exigency, what that looks like, what alternatives are, irrespective of how the county decides to handle it, or through a public hearing or otherwise. This body should be involved in that, and we should understand it better. I think the first step is information, and this is squarely where it is in our specialty, our wheelhouse, to understand all these details. So I would request, whether it needs to be a separate meeting of the executive committee, or that there is a specific item with sufficient time to have a full presentation from the landfill folks, from the county, and to fully understand this, because I think all of us are working in different silos as to what information is there, and it would allow the community to also engage. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would ask that to be done by the next meeting, because we're going to run into trouble by the time we hit November. Thank you.
Consensus on that? Everyone agree that we should have the presentation, and not only by the county, but by the other affected parties, if you will. Okay, that'll be accomplished, and I'll speak with Todd about when that will be done. Anything else on the, well, no, not yet. Anything else coming on item number 9? County update, any other questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. SCS Master Plan. Allow me to introduce Daniel Deach.
So close.
But that's how I am all today.
The good news is I respond to just about any name I'm called. So Chair, Vice Chair, members of the governing board, council, executive director, I am Daniel Deitch, the project manager for the SCS team working on the master plan. There are 3 items that I want to discuss with you today. The first is the data request. And I want to thank all of the communities that have provided the information that you have provided. It's been instrumental in helping us to develop one of our deliverables, which is identifying all of the sort of existing conditions within Broward County, facilities, services. And that is fundamentally important to the work that we're doing, because we have to understand where we are really to see where we might want to go. A lesson that we've learned is that when we issued the data request, we received information, but we also didn't receive information, and we didn't receive confirmation whether that information was still being gathered or it simply wasn't available. So I want to share with the members of the governing board that we will be summarizing what we have and what we don't have. And what we're going to ask of you is to let us know if the information will not be received. We have already submitted our draft white paper or memorandum identifying all of the existing conditions in Broward County. By our contract, we recognize that we did not provide the executive director and the ILA communities a long time to respond and provide your feedback, 5 business days, so that we're clear, which will dovetail into the discussion about the schedule that I'll touch on next. But we do ask, and that's why we're here to provide you with this advance notice that we will be summarizing the data that we have and the data that we don't have so that we can bring this matter to closure and move forward with finalizing that first significant deliverable. And just to share with you, that is sort of, again, the status quo or the baseline that all of our other work is tied to. Which doesn't mean that we only do one activity at a time. We are making great progress on many of the deliverables that will be shared with you and shared with the public for that matter, for their feedback. But we have to close out the current conditions. So Mayor Ryan just left, but for his benefit, I'm not going to name names. Everybody will receive where we are with the data request, and we just ask that you respond timely. And let me pause on that to see if anybody does have any questions.
Have you been able to get the data that says exactly how much garbage is coming from every city, where it's going from every city, where it's going to recycling, what landfill, what incinerator? Have you been able to get all that information?
Substantially, yes. And let me explain that. We are developing material flow models. And where we have not received information, we are making judgments based on our professional experience and knowledge of the conditions within Broward County and the surrounding facilities where the material is going. Let me talk about the memorandum that I referenced. We can make the entire memorandum available to you. As the executive director will attest, it's thick reading. So what we have discussed is breaking out the sections for each member community so that you can focus on that. But we will also make the entire document available so that anybody that is interested can see how that information fits into the larger context.
Okay, because I think in the near future, some of this could take place a long time, but in the near future, I want to see how much yard waste every community has, how much of it can be diverted one place. And until we have that kind of information, when I think about trying to take some of that to the Broward County landfill, the yard waste and stuff, without knowing those numbers, it's like hard to know what the capacity is. Yeah. And that's on, you go right down the line on different recyclables. And all that kind of.
Yeah. So I think most folks are aware that the state compiles that information in aggregate for every county. And that's exactly why we're asking the question so that we understand where what each municipality is contributing to that and where it is going for processing. Okay. Again, we're trying to paint as clear a picture of current solid waste management practices in Broward County.
And I don't know if this was asked of you or not, but was it asked of you to look at each of the individual contracts? It was, right?
Well, let me flip it. Okay. We asked of every community to give us your collection contracts because that provides insight into the management from the point of collection. The detailed information that we're asking is where is it going?
Right, and what would need to change in the contract? In other words, if right now you're doing bulk waste, but it might be mixed, it might be yard waste and bulk. If it's in the contract like that, then that contract would have to be changed to be just yard waste or something like that. So I think every community is going to need that kind of distinction and information if they're going to change their contract in the near future. And, not everybody's it's a contract. So they might not be able to change it, but everybody can always ask to change that.
Correct. And that's something that we've talked about several times before and was discussed at the public workshop, which I'll touch on in a moment.
Okay.
And the principle of harmonization of services so that there's consistency across the county from community to community.
Okay. lastly, are you getting any information from the school board on on how much waste is coming from there?
No.
Okay. And I had a conversation with Superintendent Halpin yesterday. And they're very interested in having all of their stuff composted. Every kid's meal in every school.
Yeah.
Which
And
is
it's
great, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And they'd like to work with us. So to that point, I think somehow we need to get them on this board so they can be hearing what we're doing. I know it was brought up earlier, but when you start to think of school board, the airport, seaport, the hospitals, all of those different entities, organizations, you take that and there's enormous chance for waste reduction there. And I think that's like almost like the low hanging fruit. If we can do that, we can start there. And so I'm not sure what it would take to get that to you, but, or to include that. We can talk a little bit.
Yeah,
about that.
the team supports that
Yeah.
completely. But to be fair, it's a policy decision of this board whether to include them, because a lot of it is managed through the commercial sort of collection system, whereas the composition here includes commercial, but it's within each municipal context.
I'll explore a little bit more.
I look forward to
Okay.
continuing the
Thank you.
conversation.
Excuse me, any questions of Daniel? Daniel, thank you very much.
So I'm not going to go anywhere.
I'm going to ask you to continue.
Thank you. I just want to touch on the schedule. I know that a schedule was included in your agenda package. I do want to share that we continue to update the schedule on a regular basis. While I can say with certainty, we are not going to meet the original schedule as contracted, and I can explain a few reasons for that. And I've shared this previously, at least with the members of the executive committee. One of our commitments, contractual commitments, was to convene our project initiation meeting for the benefit of the community, and but specifically given in this room. We committed to doing that within 2 weeks. There were scheduling conflicts that pushed that out 2 weeks. That didn't stop us from starting our other activities in earnest, but we recognized that milestone was 2 weeks behind. We specifically wrote into our contract that we are not responsible for the delays that are beyond our control, and I would put that in that category. So that's 2 weeks. The data request, the fact that I just brought it up and it's on the agenda today speaks to we need to wrap this up. Again, it has not stopped us from moving forward. In fact, we've last Friday we submitted our draft summary or memorandum of current conditions, but the authority's ability to respond to us with consolidated comments within 5 business days. Well, my day doesn't end at 5 o'clock, but let's assume that 5 o'clock is the end of business. I'm not confident we're going to get consolidated comments because we've been discussing, and part of this is developing a synchronized approach, right? So the document was delivered to the executive director. We've just had many discussions on how to distribute it to each ILA community, and we are moving very quickly to do that, but we've got to break it out into pieces and then get that distributed out. And also our commitment to the governing board and to the public at our last workshop is that part of the transparency and collaboration and inclusiveness of this master plan is to provide every deliverable posted on the website so that we can receive public comment on these documents. And again, that will dovetail into our conversation in a few minutes about the public workshop, that we're all in this together and we're relying on your support, just as you're expecting us to be an active participant. But it really is going to take everybody sitting around the table and those in the audience and those at home to really help us help the authority to deliver this project on time, not on time, but with the adjusted schedule so that there are no surprises.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the timeline? Hearing none. Daniel, please continue.
Okay, all right. So I appreciate the feedback that's been provided today, both by members of the public and members of the governing board. I want to thank the city of Lauderhill for hosting the event. It was last Wednesday. It was between 6 and 8 p.m. There are lots of ways that this could be presented. I would like to take a more positive approach. So I want to remind everybody what the purpose of this workshop was. When the solicitation for this work was issued, it was contemplated that there would be public meetings on the master plan when the master plan was drafted, right? So, let's call it 6 months after notice to proceed. We recommended, and it was agreed upon, that we need to introduce this project to the public. It was stated earlier that a lot of the public are focused on getting by day to day, right? So for most people, they put their waste at the curb and they trust that their municipalities are going to provide the service or contract for that service and do their best to manage that material. We held this workshop to start the conversation with the public. It was intended to be a collaborative, interactive approach. I think especially for the electeds and probably for members of the public, oftentimes at public meetings, while there's opportunity to share feedback, it tends to be more one way. And we wanted to set the intention that this was a bottoms up and top down master plan, one that is not being dictated, but one that is collaborative and reflects the hopes and aspirations of the community. We didn't know how many people were going to come to this first workshop. So I'll use the analogy within the team. Todd has heard me say it, and at risk of repeating myself, while this authority has been in existence for more than a year now, the activities that we're involved with, right, where the rubber meets the road, is relatively new. So we are essentially building the ship as we're launching it out to sea. So there's a lot of lessons learned. We've heard some feedback today, and I will ready to discuss more that we've been talking about internally. So what do we do at this workshop? Let me start with the numbers. We had approximately 80 people in the room, and we recognize that the attendees were not just the public, although in a sense, everybody there was lives in a community where they're impacted by solid waste. But there were elected officials, there were municipal staff. I can say for sure there were municipal staff from non-ILA communities that are paying close attention to this. And there were members of the public from both ILA and non-ILA communities. It was structured, again, to have less talking by me and others and focus really on the conversation. It was structured by design so that we could have focused conversations. But remember, this was the first conversation. It certainly will not be the last. And I know at the last executive committee meeting, there was a robust discussion about what other services outside of our contract are appropriate and necessary to expand the public engagement portion of this work. And I commend the executive committee for supporting it and the executive director for moving forward with that. We did discuss sort of the origin of the authority. We discussed the mission and the objectives, right? Again, collaborative and looking over a longer planning horizon, 40 plus years. We've discussed with the executive committee, and it was presented at the workshop, what are some of the guiding principles that help us understand what success looks like, as well as some key policies. We've been given some direction, and we're going to have further conversation around key policies, again, because that's going to help us focus the master plan. We also set the intention that we have to recognize that there's existing infrastructure within Broward County, and we're going to consider that infrastructure. But we're looking at all available options in terms of programs, services, and facilities. I know the point was made that we did not focus on waste to energy or combustion as an option. because it is one of many options. Just as we didn't say this is a composting or an organics management workshop. Again, this was to start the conversation about how we're approaching the master plan and start to hear what I like to refer to as the voice of the customer. Where are people at and what are they willing to do? And one of the challenges is that oftentimes people that come to these workshops or watch the workshops, and we know that we had at least 20 unique participants online, and we're going to make the recording of the event available for anybody else that wants to watch it. So I know the presentation is currently there. A question came up about the social media. Within the presentation are those social media handles. So I direct you to that. And let me say also, I would encourage each ILA community to point your residents to that site so that there's clarity in messaging. But we also made the point that there is no perfect solution, right? If we're not going to send it to space and make it go away, and we haven't determined what the right system is yet. We have a team of experts, not just in the United States, but global experts in each of the systems, programs, and services that we'll be looking at. We're modeling different configurations so that we can understand what the trade-offs are. We're looking at innovative approaches. You know, the simplest example that I like to give, and it's particularly pertinent in Broward County because I know the leadership that Broward County has, the leadership role that they have taken in looking at greenhouse gas impacts and other factors that affect our ability to live here over the long term. If we were to have just separated organics collection in addition to recyclable collection and solid waste collection, we're adding a truck to the roads. We know that collection vehicles are the greatest source of greenhouse gas emissions. So we want to be clear-eyed when we're looking at these alternatives that each one has advantages and disadvantages. And we're not the policymakers. We want to present you with the information that you will need to make good decisions on behalf of the ILA and hopefully will be attractive to those cities that are not part of the ILA today so that in my mind, an ideal outcome would be that Broward County and all of the municipalities within are part of this new system. So we asked a number of questions of each group. So each group had a facilitator and a subject matter expert. Well, I'm going to talk about a lesson learned up front. We had two of our subject matter experts that became sick. Not because of fear of the event, just the tail end of the pandemic. So we had to adjust, and we brought new people in that are part of our team, but we're not the subject matter experts that we intended. Again, we did not know how many people were going to be in the room, so we set it up in a way that we could separate the groups. And we were pleasantly surprised that we had greater participation than we had planned for. So I think it was alluded to in perhaps the earlier meeting that we put a second ring and in some cases a third ring so that folks could participate. We tried to set the intention that this was participatory. We asked a member of the group, not the facilitator, not the subject matter expert, to be the scribe. And we had ready volunteers and they provided readouts from the event. All of this information is going to be summarized in a memorandum that will be shared with the governing board and will also be posted to the website. We also structured it so that in addition to the conversation, some of the questions, and I'll describe the questions in a moment, but we asked people to take notes and we collected those note cards and we'll be compiling that information. And again, we're hopeful that we are building a big tent and we're able to bring more people into it over the life cycle of this project. One of the big takeaways for me is that people expressed an appreciation to be able to engage in a conversation around each of the questions. We asked questions around cost of service, right? So we provided some examples of what proposed fiscal year 25 rates would be for a single family household. We tried to keep it simple rather than focusing on the commercial rates, which most folks have no idea what those commercial rates are. But we wanted to know if folks felt like that was a fair representation, or I should say a fair value for the services that they receive. We tried to put it into context that for most communities, the cost of solid waste service in its entirety is comparable to what many of us pay for Amazon Prime subscription. It is significantly less what we pay for garbage service compared to what we pay for cable service. Significantly less than what we pay for electricity. So context was very important to us as part of this conversation. And then we asked more of a subjective or a value question. Do you think you're paying too much, too little, or just right? The takeaway was we feel like we're getting good value. It's just about right. We received additional feedback from the members of the breakout groups that they would be willing to pay more for a more sustainable system, which is important to know. I also want to respect Commissioner Shuham. We also, as part of the conversation, talked about opportunities for savings, right? So there are efficiencies that can be gained. Another question focused on what factors do the attendees believe most influence the costs associated with waste management? Because most folks don't know, but it's the collection that typically is the most expensive portion. And I'm pleased to report a lot of folks that, again, without a doubt, a lot of I would say the majority of the attendees pay attention to solid waste. That's why they were there. But we, again, think by continuing the public engagement, we're going to be able to draw more people in because we want them to understand that solid waste services are essential services. I share with you one of my favorite quotes from the sanitation director from New York City. If solid waste is not picked up one day, that's a problem. If it's not picked up for 3 days, we have a crisis. So again, these are some of the thoughts that informed what questions we asked and how we wanted to frame them. We also asked folks what they felt about practices being consistent across all sectors, right? And in that, we talked about households and businesses, air and seaports. We probably should have asked the question about the school board, because I know that there's also been a lot of conversation here about the important role that the school board can and will play in educating and sort of developing the norms for what the future solid waste system might be. We also asked people questions, the participants questions about what benefits or what kinds of incentives or improvements they would like to see through this solid waste master plan. So I know we've talked about it with the executive committee, but I'll share some of the feedback here. There was interest in mandatory recycling for businesses. It's no longer a novel concept. It is done in other counties within Florida and also around the United States. There was discussion about financial incentives or rebates for enhanced recycling. Again, better incorporation of recycling education into schools, and I know we're talking about that. There was also a discussion around matters that are beyond what this authority can do, and that is clearer labeling of recycling containers. So we talked about that discussion is happening in Washington, and that will be informing some of our recommendations in the master plan about what all of you, we will suggest most likely, that you put into your legislative priorities. So that's carried up to Tallahassee and carried on to Washington. Stronger policies on reducing plastic usage, right? Very, very important. I know I can't say for certain, but I would like to think that some communities, at least in your government facilities, do not allow single-use plastic. But that is something that can be done legislatively at the municipal level. And then, of course, encouraging composting. And we had another question asking people, would you be willing to segregate your food waste from the other waste stream components so that it could feed into a robust composting operation? And if not composting, perhaps anaerobic digestion. There are lots of opportunities out there for dealing with organic waste. In generally, the response was yes, we would do that. But now we need to extend that question beyond, the folks in the room that, right? I do it at home. I've been to enough of these meetings to know that many people here are doing that, but not everybody does that. And what we don't want to do is recommend approaches that are destined for failure, right? Because one of the advantages of resource management or approaching our work through a zero waste lens is that we have to segregate material appropriately and keep it clean. Otherwise, you're going to have downstream impacts. And lastly, we asked, again, what would, this sort of overlaps with one of the earlier questions, but how do we better engage with communities? So one suggestion was recycling and composting workshops in multiple languages, right? Take that education to the people rather than asking them to come to us. Again, another one was neighborhood and citywide competitions for waste reduction, right? Sort of turn it into a game, if you will, with rewards associated with it. Education campaigns, especially targeting the youth. For anybody with children, we know the influence that they can have on our practices, and that ties into engaging with the school. More public recycling bins and composting options in public areas. I'm not sure if anybody has seen the composting containers sprinkled throughout New York City, right? Not only does it make it easy, but it also sends signals to the community what the important values are. And there was also interest in increasing enforcement, or we could use the other side of the coin, encouraging compliance, dealing with illegal dumping. So there was a really valuable information. I'm giving you some highlights. It is going to be summarized in a memorandum. It'll be shared with all of you. But some of the key takeaways, there is a strong appetite for more sustainable and consistent waste management throughout the ILA communities. The importance of education campaigns, a willingness to adapt to new systems and new ways of managing waste and resources at home. And there is a significant support for community engagement. So all in all, I would say that the event was a success, and we learned valuable information along the way. There is no doubt that the sound was less than ideal in the room, but in a sense that created the opportunity for folks to lean in and really pay attention, minimize the side conversations. What were some of the other challenges? The opportunities. The feedback, we've got to make sure, well, I should say, we're going to ask you to amplify this experience. Again, the presentation is currently on the website. Within the website also in that same area is a feedback form. It asks for specific feedback related to the presentation, but also has an open-ended question, is there anything else that you would like to share? And I guess what we also learned is everybody brings their own ideas to the table, and that working collaboratively with each member community, we can better understand what the sensitivities are and what more we can do, or what can we do differently to increase the public engagement. So again, we try to reinforce the notion that this is a collaborative process. It's inclusive, that we have not come to the table with conclusions about what the master plan will recommend. We view this whole process as education for the governing board, education for the members of the community, because if it is a master plan at the end of the day, that doesn't meet the needs of its constituents, what good is it?
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Just a couple observations. One is, I probably got a little started on the wrong foot there when I do think it was a success. So I kind of started my initial comments with some negatives on it, but overall it was a success. We had a ton of people out there. It was great interaction. You just went through all of the questions and great feedback, just sitting there enjoying it, frankly, enjoying it. Hearing, firsthand those responses was awesome. So thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to the report, the kind of summary, because I was just in one group and I'm curious how it all came out. But I guess the point that I was trying to make was that to get more people there, we kind of had that generic name that is not going to draw almost anybody into it, right? And on the other hand, I get we don't want to scare people into going there and then focusing just on incineration. So I understand there's a balance there. My recommendation, and this is not my area of expertise, so take it with a whole, Salt Lake City of salt. But I think we need to go down one level, have that name and then talk about almost maybe a consideration. And these are the potential types of solutions we're looking at, and just list them all and don't highlight any one over the other. But the ones that gives people hopefully a little bit more of, oh, wait a minute, I see this here. Maybe I do want to go, but I also see that it's one of many different options that they're going to be looking at. So I don't expect to just be talking about incineration, and I think that was kind of what I felt coming out of it. I thought it was awesome. I really did.
Yeah.
But I got two different responses. One is we didn't talk enough about incineration, and that's why I showed up there for. And the other one was, well, I didn't really know what this is about, but I'm glad I came because now I see, And so I think just something to do that next level down to be able to get the interest and have people a little bit greater understanding of what they're going to be in for.
And it's a valid point, and I appreciate you sharing that. And one of the things that we've been talking about internally and with the executive director is, again, the work that we're contracted to do through the master planning process and the work that is being done on the side. We've talked about potential focus groups. We've talked about, much more, many more surveys, because that's an easy way for all of you to engage with your community. We've talked about putting together informational videos, right, that can be posted, and you all have public access stations. So perhaps there's a way that we can penetrate into the community through that, as well as many of the other channels that you talked about. And maybe, and again, this is why we agreed to an additional services or a contingency task, so that we have the flexibility to be agile and meet your needs. I mean, we love thinking about and talking about solid waste management, especially one that is, focused on using that zero waste lens, because it's a different conversation than let's just deal with it at the end of the pipe. But we would love to have workshops where we talk about facilities. We would love to have a workshop where we talk about programs, and it's another workshop where we talk about services. The more that we talk about it, hopefully it will have an infectious, in a positive way, impact, and that we can draw more people into the tent. Because where I started with this is, for most people, and I'm going to invoke my favorite garbologist, William Rathje, may he rest in peace. He once said, "Garbage is in sight, but it's out of mind." Right? We can walk down the street and we can see garbage, and we don't think to pick it up. Right? So the more that we can bring people to us, and we can meet people where they are, and think about waste the way that we're approaching it, and I think the way that we in the room are approaching it, that in the waste stream are resources. And if we can manage the waste as resources, that is our goal, to develop the system that aligns with the sensibilities of the community that the master plan is being prepared for.
Thank you. And I recognize it's 11 o'clock. Bear with me, just a little indulgence. I have Commissioner Furr.
Thank you. I appreciate you bringing up the idea that, or the fact that Broward County is looking at this through more than one lens. And yesterday we had a resilient roundtable, And I think there's 6 of us here that were at that. And that's going to inform a lot given what we're going to do. When you talk about landfills, and generating greenhouse gases and all that. So I do think we have to make sure we're not looking at this in a vacuum. Because we're looking at the 25, 50-year scenarios with sea level rise and what that's going to mean. And at the same time, we're looking at a 40-year scenario here. They are not separate. There's a lot of things that go hand in hand on that. And I do think it's important, and I'm glad to hear that, recognizing that everything from the trucks that, even though I am seeing that Waste Management is now using the gas, methane, to drive their trucks. And if they can start to do those kind of things, then that's that kind of circular economy that we want to get to. I'm glad, it sounds like it was pretty successful. I was not there. I kind of wanted it to be independent. And all of us just kind of, let's hear what the public had to say. And I'm glad to hear that, and it doesn't surprise me that the public's willing to pay for their, I think all of us know that they're willing to make sure they pay for clean water. You ask them, clean water, just kind of clean. Will you give me the clean water? Same with air, same with these kind of things that are basic to survival and living. But I don't think they know the full story of garbage and all the things it takes. I was amazed yesterday at every city that brought up all the different things that they were doing. And even though this was on resilience and talking about as much floodwater as anything else, but it was every city was talking about in the last comments, because we went around the room, what they were doing with regard to garbage resilience and things. So there's a lot of integration there. I think it was almost more on garbage than it was on the resilience, right? And for those that were there. So let's make sure that we keep looking at those together, because it's important. We don't want to, one of the main reasons we're trying to take the organics out of the landfill is because it's one of the main proponents of greenhouse gas. We can't be the perpetrators of our own demise. And that's, those are the big issues. And, somebody might just look, why are you looking just at the landfill? Well, there's a bunch of other things that are connected here. And we have to make those connections. And it's up to us to make those connections to the public. Those are hard things to do. That's when you're talking education, making those connections and making it so somebody can grab hold of it. That's what we're looking for your help on that. But I guess I'm asking more than anything to make sure that when you're doing the master plan, that you're taking into consideration. We just finished the vulnerability assessment for Broward County. It just was released yesterday. And those things, and for those that were here, that were there yesterday, there's a huge price tag on that. Huge. And there's a huge amount of dedicated resources that are going to have to go to that. Those kind of things are going to have to be thought of, when we're putting this together. They're going to have to go hand in hand. So I know that wasn't brought up in the public. I know that wasn't part of the discussion, but it needs to be at the next one.
So here comes a request.
Okay.
And a comment. Please share the vulnerability assessment, whatever the product is,
today.
with the executive director so that we
Yep.
can consider that. And the other is with the management of organics, you bring up one of the classic tensions, right? There, in many communities, they're like, well, we have a landfill gas collection system and a beneficial use system.
Right.
So there are tensions, and that's what we want to tease out, that there isn't one approach, but we want to understand what are the differences between them, because you're policymakers. You have the opportunity to decide what you want for this authority. And we want to fortify you with the best information to set good policy.
Thank you. Let's comment. Member Mayerson.
Yeah, just one thing I want to be mindful of, because you did mention that people are willing to pay more for it. We've just all, as municipal elected officials, had our budgets. If we came to our taxpayers and said, we're going to do this, are you willing to pay more for it? I would imagine that 95% of our community says, we don't want to pay more taxes. So I understand the importance of looking at, solid waste, fire, EMS, park and rec, all these things. I don't want to necessarily look at them in a silo. So if you said to somebody, are you willing to pay more for either solid waste or emergency services, which one would you choose? If somebody says both, well, how much more are you willing to pay? $10 more a month, $20 more a month? What is that amount? I sent to our executive director a survey that Palm Beach is doing, their solid waste authority. You want me to speak into the microphone?
I do.
Was that the signal? So I just want to be mindful of that because everybody's going to say absolutely. But the question is, what are they willing to pay more for in reality? And I just don't want to lose that focus. And I certainly understand sitting around the table today discussing solid waste, we all would say, sure, I'll pay more. But there comes a point where you're going to have to give and take. So how much more is that? And the other point is, I think that as part of our next, moving in the future, our next chair, that we give members phonetic spelling, but I won't go there.
Moving right along. Daniel, thank you very much. And thank you, team, as well. Appreciate
you.
it. The last item we have is new and old business informational material. Anyone have anything new or old that they wish to go over? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you very much. 8 minutes over.